Is it me you're looking for? I can see it in your eyes. Welcome, my friends, to The Right Mindset. I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and I'm grateful and thankful that you have joined me again for another video on my channel to help you develop the right mindset. And today's lesson, I guess, or overview of your writing craft and ability will go over developing a protagonist with techniques that you might find helpful, give a little pushback on traditional methods, and hopefully get your mind thinking outside the box. So let's develop the right mindset. All right, as always, thank you. A massive shout out and appreciation for everyone who's A, watching this video right now, and B, who has continued to watch and celebrate and support the channel by liking, commenting, and sharing the video with the community. More importantly, adding your voice through comments, giving me questions, and additionally, push back. We got it. We got to challenge ideas, right? Because no idea is the right idea unless it's the right idea for you. As long as it makes sense and it's helping you, what's the harm in trying something different, right? Which brings me to, if you're new here, a beginner writer or an advanced author, even a screenwriter, give that subscribe button a click and follow along on lessons about your craft, analyzing and reviewing storytelling, and interviews with fellow writers as we celebrate the industry and talk shop together. Okay. But let's get into the meat of it all. We're here to develop a protagonist. Now, there are generic characters that pull a narrative through the book, specifically stories where the character is just enough to be in the story, but not necessarily enough to make us go, "This is going to change my life," right? But then there are developed characters that elevate our stories. Characters that we say, "Ooh, this is a new spin. This is a fresh new take on something that I have read before, but I'm still intrigued. This is definitely." I want to dive into this, right? And developing a protagonist is a big step that is needed in the writing process. We either kind of have a character before we begin writing, or we overdevelop a character beforehand. Honestly, personally, I think there's a sweet spot in there where you have a character that fits perfectly into your story. Look, you have to start writing at some point, and getting bogged down with their favorite color kills your action forward. And what I'm saying here is, look, and I in the past have fallen into this, and speaking with other fellow authors and writers and people that have really inspired me, even musicians, actors, people in the industry writing scripts, books, whatever the case may be. It's like there has to come at some certain point where you say, wait, let me just write it. Wait, let me just create this. There is a discovery time frame where you're discovering the story, you're thinking about it, you're brainstorming, you're really going into the depths of it. There is a certain point where you have to say, does this influence the narrative? And is this history important to the story? Do I need to understand this history to really explore the story and add some new world building element to it? But more importantly, there's discovery in writing. Even if you're an outliner or a pantser, you're going to have a discovery period as you write. So you have to find that sweet spot where you go, am I overdeveloping this character, or have I not developed this character enough? And then you get to a point where you're like, wait a minute, the character is ready to be on the page and start interacting with other characters and situations. And while you do that, you might discover, wait a minute, I really like where this conversation went with the character, or I like how they hesitated here, or and then you could say to yourself, I think this is more of who the character is than what I put down on the paper. Really, their favorite color being purple isn't integral to the story, and that's okay because you're a writer. Your job is not to really say, "Oh, I don't want to rewrite this," because your first draft is not the best draft. You're gonna have to write 3, 4, maybe even 5 drafts of your book. So it's okay to really work it out on the page. If you're an outliner, get your outline going, really fill it up. I like a really detailed outline. But there has to come a point where you just start writing and you let the writing help you discover the truth in the story, or help you, because your first draft you're going to be like, does any of this make sense? Am I hitting all my beats, my plot points? Am I, did I earn any of these stories? Did I earn this character action? Did I earn this? Did I earn that? Did I seed this enough? And the answer is probably going to be no, because you're going to have to go back and at least, let's just assume you're the greatest writer in the world. You're going to have to write a second draft. You're just going to have to. But there are several ways to develop your protagonist. But today, I'm going to go over two specific ways. And the first one is the way that I have seen on the internet a lot, and the whole, like, breaking down, like, here's a list of things and just answer these questions. Not that that's a bad way. It's just not something that has helped me in the past. Which brings me to the second way I'm going to show you, which is the way that I have learned to do it, which has helped me get deep into my story while developing my protagonists, which I have learned from other authors that I've talked with, especially in the screenwriting process. This method is really powerful for screenwriting, because sometimes, if you're writing a series, or you're writing shorts or whatever, you gotta be able to write. You gotta be able to write, right? It's not like a novel where you could take a year on it. Like, if you're writing a script or a story, or a TV series, or whatever, a web series, you gotta just get into it. So this way kind of leaked into my novel writing, and it has helped me. But actually, both, going back and forth between novels and screenwriting, this technique really helps. The first one I want to go over is the list. Everyone knows about the list, right? So here's a list of things you could ask yourself to make a character. I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm going to kind of like just mention them and then discuss it a little bit. Okay. So the first one is, what are your character's contradictions, right? They want to explore the world, but they don't have the confidence to do it. But what does your character want, right? Hey, you need to know what your character wants. So how do you write this out? What does my character want? And you go, they want to explore space. They want to get off the farm. They want to get out from underneath the stairwell, because they live literally in a closet. It could be anything you want. Whatever you want it to be, it could be. However, what are you really exploring here? You're writing statements. They want to do this, or there's a they want to find out why their partner is sneaking around and being secretive. And then also, by the way, it might turn out that it's because the story leads to them throwing a massive surprise party for their 40th, or maybe their 60th, or whatever the case may be, and they just didn't know. Or the one of the characters didn't realize it was the first time they went on a date anniversary, but it was like 20 years since their first date, and it was going to be a huge thing, and they were getting everyone together at like, it doesn't always have to be bad, but it could appear bad. And the character's like, ooh, right? Anyway. So why can't they have the thing they want? Why can't they know what's going on? Why can't they figure out why their partner is being sneaky? Why are they so elusive? Why have they started locking their phone? Why don't they come home? How come they weren't where they said they were going to be, etc., etc. What is the psychology of your character? You want to understand the psychology to give them but to get deeper into who they are, you want to be able to simplify it, right? So Einstein once said, and I'm paraphrasing, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it enough, right? So when you think of the psychology of your character, right, you could sit there and be like, they have narcissistic personality disorder, or they have a trigger against narcissistic personality disorder. Let's talk about maybe they have night terrors. Maybe let's go a little deeper into psychology. They love challenging people, but in a healthy way. They things like that. Like, what is the psychology of who they are? Are they comfortable in relationships? Did their family, did their parents stay together? Did their parents break up? Did their parents die? Did their parents whatever, right? And then you kind of try to figure out how it influences them psychologically, and then you kind of simplify that, right? Which leads us to their goals, desires, and yearning. Like, what are their goals? What are the things that they personally want to achieve in life? And it doesn't even have to do anything with the inciting incident. It could just be like who they are in life, right? You know, they might be someone who wants, I want to get that raise at work, or, I'd like to retire at 50, or, one of my major goals is to go to Ireland, right? So it could be anything, okay? But it doesn't necessarily have to even influence the story. It just helps you say, who is this character, right? Why do they want to go to Ireland? Why do they want to retire at 50? Why do they want to blank, 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 right? This is what the list does. It makes you just kind of bog down and just write a whole bunch of stuff that you may or may not even use, but it lets you understand the character and like how you're going to write them, what's their personality, right? How about how do they show themselves to others with their masked and unmasked versions? You have to think of the ego self, right? This is also psychology, sort of. There's the who I am in private, who I am around the familiars, familiar people, people I know, and those around strangers or people I don't know, right? Those are basically the three main egos. It's like, who am I by myself? Who am I around people I am comfortable with? And who am I around people that I don't really necessarily know? And those are three different moments. So, like, who is this person? Right? And you could say in private, they like foot fetish videos. All right. But around other people, they find foot fetishes. They find fetishes in general disgusting. Around people they are comfortable with, they say, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with fetishes. I myself maybe am not someone who likes a fetish." So what do we learn? We know in private they're like, "Ooh, foot fetish," but with strangers they deny the fetishes are ridiculous. But with people they know, they go, "I don't judge people for fetishes, but I myself don't want to have a fetish." Which, by the way, adds a lot of opportunity story wise, because if one of their friends is like, "Oh, you don't mind fetish? It's funny, I have a foot fetish," and then the protagonist is like, "You have a foot fetish? Why? What do you like about feet?" Even though we know the protagonist loves has a foot fetish, they're still being like a little hesitant, but they're like, "Oh yeah, tell me about it," and then they might say something like whatever. I don't have a foot fetish. So maybe it's like like their friend is saying, "Oh, I like when they do blank blank blank," and then the protagonist is like, "Oh, well, that does sound interesting." Not that I would ever be interested in that, but I could see where the intrigue is, right? So that's the power of knowing who someone is in private, who someone is with a familiar person, and who someone is with a stranger. Other things you could really explore are their interests, hobbies, and skills. Obviously, if you're doing an adventure story, their skills are important, but is it important to the narrative? So, for example, if you've ever seen National Treasure 1, again, I don't have a Diet Cherry Pepsi. I apologize. It's my favorite flavor. If in National Treasure, like, we understand he's an expert in historical American history, and we also know that he grew up being told about a specific treasure, so he's like an expert in this specific thing, right? So we know his skill level and his hobbies and his interests are this gold, which is has to do with the Gates, which is his last name Gates, has to do with their history and their family. So we know that he's interested in that. However, we don't learn anything that he knows in Jesus. We in the first movie, we're not learning things that Ben Gates knows in the second National Treasure. We're not learning any of that information because it's not imperative to the narrative. However, in the second movie, we start understanding his skill set for that second movie. We understand, but in the first one, like, we know that because he hunts treasures, or he's a historian freak, and by the way, I'm using that in a loving way, not like freak, but we so when he takes spoiler alert, when he steals the Declaration of Independence, we know that he understands that lemon thing, and then his father says something, and go, "Oh, okay, so this is something their family knows." So it's sort of like we get it, but those skills, every skill he has in that movie is needed for that narrative. Now, those skills can either be expanded upon in a sequel, which some are, or they could just be negated totally because they're unneeded. Like for example, he doesn't do the lemon thing again with the heat. But additionally, we learn new skills about who what skills he has. So it's important not to just like it's great to be like, they could ride a unicycle. Not only is that something they're interested in learning, but it's one of their big hobbies is they like trying to ride the tallest unicycle in the world. But if it has nothing to do with the narrative, you're not going to use it in stories. So do you really, how does that influence them? Well, maybe instead of saying in your notes, he wants his goal, his hobby is to ride the biggest unicycle in the world, the tallest one. What is it about that that's interesting to you? Which is probably going to help your character develop more to understand why they would want that than that they do like riding unicycles. Another thing is actions speak louder than words. So what they do or do not do becomes who they are. So that's important. So understanding their positions on things is another thing on this, and of course their internal world, belief system, and of course favorite color. You got to know their favorite color. Moving on. So I'm personally not a fan of the list, as it takes me too deep into into a stagnant idea. Like it kills for me. If I'm like, what's their favorite color? Purple. Like it doesn't do anything for me. I feel like that's it. That's it. It's purple. And yeah, I could brainstorm it. Why purple? And I could start. I rather just go into the history, but more importantly, I like the narrative of the story to dictate the importance of who the character is and what, because there are things I need a character to do or be able to do or feel obligated to do or be inspired to do or be hesitant to do, and I need to know why they made those choices. And once I reach certain points in stories, to understand that why, I'll develop that aspect of the character. So I'll let my story concept become part of the water to basically grow that seed, that idea, and develop the character. Because also you don't want your character to be a Mary Sue, and the way you could find what their limitations are by how do I want this conflict to be resolved or even to be implemented. You say, you know what, maybe the character's good at this but not good at this, or maybe the character's learning because they blah blah blah. And that's the way I really like to do it. So imagine looking at a list, and and your list is just like, they're a middle child of 7 kids, parents are wealthy, workaholics. The parents are workaholics. They want to be a biologist. Like imagine that was my list for a character. Middle child of 7 kids, parents are wealthy, workaholics. They want to be a biologist. Maybe I even write they're Catholic. So, but again, is that important to the narrative, right? But I like to explore these ideas, and here would be this would sort of look like what I might write for those same things. So they grew up in a household as one of 7 children. Their parents filled their minds, bellies, and souls with possibilities through their sacrifices to become financially stable. A middle child, Christine, has aspirations to explore the vast unknown of the human body, how it works, why it does what it does. There's more to that than they want to be a biologist. Why do they want to be a biologist? Ooh, they're interested in the human body. I get it. How it works and why does it work? Instead of I want to be a biologist. The other thing is their parents educated them and filled their minds, bellies, and souls with possibility, meaning that they were encouraging. They made sure they were fed. Education was important to them. They were part of their education, even though they were workaholics, right? Which is more powerful than they were workaholics. And I could work with that. Like in my mind, as I'm writing a character, if I know they're encouraging, maybe they're encouraging to others because they grew up in an encouraging household. Or maybe they let people try to discover who they are because they always felt their parents they were just over them too much. They were always making me do this. They were always making me do that. Right. So I'll let you find who you are. So those are choices, right, that we can discover by understanding that. This basically, it's just I like to go deeper. And in fact, I never use lists. I never write out questions. I will write questions as I develop my outline and as I start getting ready to write a story. Like if I get stuck, I might ask myself questions like, well, why? What do I really want to achieve here, or what is the point of this? Am I you? Is this Does this scene have anything to do with the narrative? Does it help the narrative? Does it hinder the narrative? Is it just a cool part? I'm like, I just want to see them do this cool thing. Whatever the case may be, I'll ask those questions, but I don't usually ask questions about the character until deeper into the thing. But what I love doing is exploring story situations and the psychology of how characters would interact with those ideas. As an example, I might think about a dynamic between two people, three people, even a person versus self or against the world. That dynamic is interesting to me and helps me develop the character. And from there, I will just think of the moment and brainstorm on it. And brainstorming is like my best friend. I brainstorm everything. That's different than listing out stuff. Like let me read a list of questions and answer those questions. Brainstorming to me is me taking something and exploring it. Me taking it to the craziest places I can and then going, wait, let me dial that back, right? Um, but what would it be like if a kid wanted to understand how their body worked to become master of their biology, right? So that's interesting to me. And if we took the list upstairs and we said middle child of 7 kids, parents are wealthy, workaholics, they want to be biologists, none of that is as interesting to me as me exploring what would it be like if a kid wanted to understand how their body worked to become master of their biology, and where does that go? And now I kind of work on that story, and that story will develop my protagonist. I already know that it's a kid, so but it doesn't mean the story is about a kid. It means that I can have an adult character, protagonist, and we could explore their past, that like through flashbacks or people that they run into, their friends, family, and associates that bring up, oh, remember when you were a kid and you would just take apart frogs in the backyard, and we all thought you were crazy, but now you're literally finding the cure for A, B, and C. Whatever they whatever. Anyway, all right, we're getting pretty long on this video, so let's do our final thoughts. Develop My final thoughts on this is developing protagonists is more than putting a list together of questions and answering them. You have to explore their choices. Yes, mapping out ideas in a Q&A list could help and is one way to do it. To dig deeper into a character, step away from that list and place your characters into specific situations. This has always helped me as well. Situations that might not have anything to even do with your story. Why? This is so you can get to know your character. The fun part is you might end up discovering your character while also developing the story you want to tell. Basically, a helpful tool is to place characters in fake scenes and work on their interactions. Another fun trick is to expand the backgrounds of their adventures, leading to the first page of the story. So, real quick, what I'm saying here is uh, take your characters and go, how would they react at a supermarket? The supermarket has nothing to do with the story, but I want to see how they react to mundane. And where do I see them and how do I see them reacting in a mundane situation as simple as the supermarket, right? And what does that do? It kind of helps you discover who the characters. There is the other way, which I mentioned earlier in the video, where I like to do it, where I have my outline, I have my story, I kind of understand who my character is at a point where I feel confident enough to start writing. And then through that, I might discover more about the character, which is fine because it's only a first draft. And I'll allow that to build on the character. I might even change their personalities a little bit because I'm seeing something come through. And remember, you don't want to have stories with like the funny person, the serious person, the tough person, the thief. Like, you don't want to do that. Right? But basically, I know all scenes are fake. I know that every single thing we write in a book is fake. But what I mean by fake scene is there is your outlines of the story that you're interested in writing, and then there's fake scenarios that have nothing to do with that, so you can discover who your character is. And we discover them, yes, through your story, but if you want to practice writing and understanding character motivations and developing your character, put them in a white room, build that room up, and create a scenario for them, and you'll learn who that character is. Okay. And then the other thing, the fun trick to expand the backgrounds of their adventure is basically, if instead of writing a list, write a short story or a couple paragraphs, even a thousand words, 3,000 words is a day. For me, that's a day of writing, right? That's what, 90 minutes, right? You could write that in 90 minutes, maybe even 2 hours, right? So write out 1,000 to 3,000 words of their life, basically in an essay or even a short story, whatever, a short moment that explains how they got to that first moment on page one. And that might get you into the character and get you into the story. But more importantly, it'll help you figure out who the protagonist is leading to that moment. The next video in the series will focus on traits of a protagonist. Basically, we'll be looking into what makes them unique and how do their traits influence the narrative. Very important. There's a theme going on here. How does what I write and how does what goes on in character building and anything I talk about on this channel is always how does it influence the narrative? Does it help the narrative, or is it just cool looking, right? Question: who's a character that you feel was well developed in their first novel? Let me know in the comments below, because the community loves to see these things. Also, by the way, it doesn't have to be a novel. It could be like a first movie, or it could be a TV show where you're like, that pilot episode, like they really, that's a developed character on episode one. I like where they were going, right? Because obviously episode 2 and beyond, or a second or third movie, or a second or third book, the character would already be developed. And I'm talking about like their first outing, right? By the way, if you want to learn more about the craft, a little bit insight of the industry, and hear from fellow authors, writers, screenwriters, etc., please subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you don't miss out. It's very important. I do a video a week. Sometimes I add a second video, and additionally, more importantly, there are times I do live sessions where I take what I teach you here as a lesson and I do it in real time to make up something from scratch. And I'd be happy to take requests from people during the live and be like, hey, try this, right? Because it's all about brainstorming and having fun. Until then, keep developing the right mindset.